the CEO of my own detective agency.
Imagine this, an 11-year-old boy who believes that he is the best detective in town runs the agency. Total failures with his best friend, an imaginary 1,500-pound polar bear. I am today's host, Nathan, and I'll be explaining 2020's Timmy Failure. This is an adaptation of a book series of the same title. In other words, this is just one Timmy Failure story in the book series catalog. The movie begins with Timmy introducing himself to the viewer. He says he is the CEO of Failure Inc., the best investigating outfit in town. He shows us the headquarters, which is his house. It is directly under the shadow of a huge tank, literally. He also introduces us to Total, his assistant. Total is a polar bear, and they met when Timmy was 4 and have been inseparable since. Total seems only to be an imaginary friend. Tommy also mentions his mode of transport used for investigative work. It is a Segway borrowed from his mother. Except she doesn't approve of him using it when she is not.
Never, ever, ever!
I thought that was vague.
Timmy rides through town to his latest case while Total clumsily follows close behind. Timmy stops at Gunner's house, and Gunner answers the door. Timmy then hands him a handwritten business card. Gunner invites him in to proceed with his investigations. Apparently, Gunner's backpack was stolen. Gunner also adds that he doesn't mind that it was taken except that his Swiss Army knife was inside. He says he used it during his last scouting camp trip and needed the knife to obtain a scouting badge. Timmy starts to imagine how that feels like, and his thought goes wild for a moment there. Timmy is then shown where the bag was last kept. Timmy makes a note on his tape recorder. Timmy then goes over to Gunner's senior brother's room to some antagonism from Gunner's brother. Gunner's brother is literally using the same knife Gunner talked about.
Get out, or I'm gonna pound you.
And on his door, you can see Gunner's backpack hanging there. In essence, Gunner's senior brother is the culprit, but Timmy misses all these clues and simply makes yet another irrelevant remark on his tape recorder. Point to be taken, Timmy is not a very smart investigator, even if he thinks he is the greatest one around.
What am I missing?
He also hopes that the monetary windfall from solving Gunner's case will go a long way in establishing a proper investigator's office so he can stop working from home.
So I scheduled a teleconference. I need more office space. I'll probably move my office downtown.
Next, Timmy is at school, and his class form teacher is Mr. Crocus. Timmy thinks they are enemies.
You pick up that hamster or you get detention.
On Tommy's table, there are Rollos and Molly Moskins, and then there is Karina, to whom Timmy insists must not be named. He regards Karina as his adversary. But then, it is time for a midterm class test. Timmy is notorious for using his multiple choice sheets as a medium for artwork. He would usually only shade in parts of it to create an art masterpiece, as you can imagine. The class teacher tells the class that the students will be graded according to their group tables and not individually.
Timmy doesn't study, he'll tank our grade.
Timmy is making a comment to Molly when he is asked to step forward and share his thoughts with the class. He declines to speak and instead pushes his side of the desk somewhere else because he is avoiding Karina. He subsequently gets detention for this. During recess, he is alone in the corner. He says it's best so as not to out his operations to the other children on the playground or to Karina especially. He is in a secret conversation with Total during this time. 2 men ride by on their bicycles, and Timmy refers to them as Russians. He doesn't like them very much. Later on, his mother talks to Mr. Crocus about Timmy's behavior in class that day and about how he is failing class. Mr. Crocus mentions middle school and how much more difficult it would be for Timmy to cope there if he can't master prep
Timmy,
school.
Tell Mr. Crocus that you're sorry.
Mistakes were made.
Also, he has been given responsibility for the class hamster as some kind of discipline.
5th grade would be the final year of my formal education.
The next day, he rides over to Maxine's house on his mother's Segway. Once there, she confesses that the hamster is already dead. Timmy gets into investigator mode and asks that the hamster be placed in a showbox. An autopsy has to be conducted to determine the real cause of death. On getting back outside, he finds that the Segway is missing. Timmy figures this only means more investigating work on his plate.
Timmy, dead.
Next, Timmy heads over to Rollo's house
He's fired up today.
I know.
and is told he has gone for fencing practice.
Hayden, you're doing great. Anton, a little more speed.
Rollo training to be an assassin. Possible betrayal.
They meet up eventually and compare investigative notes. In short, they believe they have a mysterious case to solve that involves the Russians.
That means the Russians!
He then goes over to the library and asks the attendant named Flo if she has any intel on the so-called Russian operatives.
Russian operatives.
Just said it out loud again.
But then Molly shows up and points him towards Karina.
Molly Moskins. Source. Karina's part Russian. Well, her grandmother's from Russia, so that makes her part Russian. A Russian operative.
He leaves immediately to check the intel out. Next, he is at home with his mother. She is getting dressed up when the doorbell rings. She asks Timmy to answer it. Apparently, his mother has asked a man named Crispin over for dinner. He is a meter maid by profession, which means he is an American cop who gives parking tickets to offenders.
You know, people really don't like meter maids. It's actually why I became one. Turn negative into a positive.
Timmy signifies he is suspicious of collaborating with local law enforcement because they might jeopardize his cases. However, dinner at their house goes well. Next, Timmy is lined up to see a school counselor named Mr. Jenkins. He tries to find out why Timmy seems to be acting differently. But Timmy is onto him and is uncooperative. Timmy insists he can't just share his intel with anyone because someone might be listening, namely the Russians. Their session ends without much progress. Next, Timmy, Rollo's, and of course, his polar bear partner, Total, go over to Karina's house to investigate the lead. Timmy thinks she is responsible for his missing Segway. They get there and try to hide behind the bushes, but Karina spots them.
What are you guys doing? Just standing.
Then her father arrives from work, and she has to go to him. Timmy then figures the Segway may not be at Karina's residence and that it may actually be at the bank vault where her father works. At home, Timmy's mother finds out that her Segway is gone, and she gives Timmy trouble for it. He lies that he lent it to Molly Moskins.
Timmy, that was not yours to lend.
Now he has to go over to her house to strike a deal with her. While there, she is at tea and invites him. He wants her to lie about the Segway to her mother peradventure his own mother calls.
So you want me to be your cover? Affirmative.
In return, she wants him to paint her nails and his too. It seems she has a crush on him. At school the next day, they are all seated at a test, and Rollo finds out that Timmy didn't study, thus putting their collective grade in jeopardy. After school, Timmy and Rollo's get on a bus taking them into the city. Rollo's isn't comfortable with this, which is two 10-years-old traveling long distances alone. They get to the bank and then put on fencing masks to hide their identity. The mission is to inspect the bank vault to see if the Segway is stashed there.
Can I help you, boys?
They ask the security guard about this, but he insists they take off the masks according to bank policy. Timmy throws down the jar of marbles they brought along to create a diversion. But it turns out the jar is made of plastic. So the next best thing is to run for their lives. Timmy is soon at the counselor's office again, and the counselor, who seems to have figured him out, wants Timmy to solve a case involving his homework.
Is there any chance I could hire you?
What's the case?
Let's start with the homework he's assigning you.
That will definitely cost more.
Mr. Jenkins is really trying to redirect Timmy's energies. Afterward, Crispin comes over to the school to pick Timmy up in his little police wagon.
It means you're normal, and my mother doesn't like normal people.
Timmy soon accuses Crispin of kidnapping him and runs off. That evening, Timmy's mum is surprised that he is doing his homework. In fact, Timmy thinks he is solving a case thanks to Mr. Jenkins. His mum is just grateful that he is behaving normally. Then she drops a bomb by telling him they have to move to a cheaper apartment. Timmy reacts angrily because moving is inconvenient for him right now with all the cases he is working on.
Not hire mother. Unreliable.
The next day, all the kids in his class are slated to go on a field trip. They soon arrive at an electric dam. Their tour guide there, who is probably also a supervisor, tells them about how the electricity generated from this dam can power the entire city of Portland. Karina asks about the security arrangement at the dam and so unintentionally starts a conversation amongst the kids where everybody is trying to talk all at once. Mr. Crocus tells everyone to pipe down. Timmy is firmly planted by his side, and Mr. Crocus is determined to keep an eye on him throughout their trip. Timmy starts to question Karina's motives for asking about the dam's security. He looks up and realizes that Karina is not there anymore. And he imagines she is executing her evil plan and that of the Russians to render the whole city of Portland without electricity. So he goes over to Rollo's and asks that he distract Mr. Crocus.
Do this, and I promise to study.
Before you know it, Timmy has run off in search of Karina to stop her. Mr. Crocus, being the old man that he is, slowly gives chase. Timmy eludes him and heads upstairs. Mr. Crocus follows him.
Get over here, you little rat. You'll never make it to 6th grade.
Whoa.
And they end up on the ledge overlooking the river. The gates of the dam are just below them. Mr. Crocus seems to be afraid of heights and urges Timmy to get back, but Timmy's scarf is stuck.
I never quit on a single student.
Mr. Crocus tries to rip it off so they can get back inside, but right then, the floodgates are opened, and Mr. Crocus panics before fainting. As his punishment, Timmy's mother puts an end to his so-called detective agency.
I'm shutting it all down.
Stop! No! You're gonna stop running your agency.
You've got to grow up.
Yes.
Timmy also has to release Total, his partner, to the zoo. Timmy's mom is especially angry because she lost her job to stay home and be with him. Sometime later at school, Timmy gets a free cookie from Karina and goes over to the playground to nurse it. Mr. Jenkins approaches him for a quote-unquote case. He goes on to advise Timmy about adapting even when the odds are against him.
Because you're different, you make a mistake, you own it. Then you learn from it. If you love what you do, you gotta fight for it.
Timmy seems to take this advice to heart, and Mr. Jenkins gets up off the floor and leaves. This is when Timmy takes a second look at the cookie Karina gave him. He thinks he has spotted a listening bug embedded in the cookie. He suddenly realizes he mustn't give up on his dreams and his investigating agency because evil schemes are always afoot.
That meant I was going to need my partner.
He goes over to Crispin's workplace, which is the police office. Crispin is just about to exit the building when Timmy approaches him. Timmy wants a pass at the zoo to liberate Total, his polar bear. When they get there, they are informed that the polar bear habitat has been shut down for renovation.
Absurd.
Timmy runs away to see for himself. He calls out Total's name and almost gives up, but then Total grunts, and Timmy is happy he has his partner back. On the ride back home, they spot a purse thief, and Timmy urges Crispin to chase him.
There he goes!
Okay, I got it.
Timmy is left in the car and somehow ends up in a minor accident when he tries to move the car himself.
Mistakes were made. And it hurt.
His mother gets to him at the hospital and is glad he is safe. Timmy apologizes for everything, and his mother decides to allow him to continue running his imaginary agency.
Upset I made a mistake.
Reconsider hiring Mom.
At some other time, Timmy meets up with Crispin to enlist him for the animal rally. Crispin then tells Timmy about his mother's missing Segway. He hints at the Russians having a hand in its disappearance and so takes Timmy to the police impound room. And there it is, the beloved Segway. Later on, at the outdoor animal rally, Timmy is given a chance to mount the stage and say a few words.
Timmy Failure.
No.
He rides in on the Segway and ends up giving a rousing speech to some applause.
God bless Coverett Elementary.
And then afterward, it's back to being suspicious of Karina as well as her Russian connections and to more investigative agency work. Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos from Imagine This, and make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.